In any life, we have highs and lows, light and dark, wins and losses. What happens when we encounter that moment in time when what happens next could change everything? Join us as we step into another person's inspirational moment and see how we can connect their experience to ours. This is Greg Stevens, and you're listening to A Shot of Inspiration. Hey everyone, I'm Greg Stevens, your host for A Shot of Inspiration. I'm glad to have two gentlemen here today. We've got Eli Libby and Kyle Nelson, and they have a podcast called Biz Bros, but they've got something deeper they're doing now. And when I met these two, we were introduced to a friend of ours named Chris Williams, and we just hit it off. We just talked for quite a while, kindred spirits. So I'm excited to have this conversation go organically because I thought these guys had a great message, and they've got a coaching program for men. I think it's a 3-month program, isn't it, guys?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to hearing about some of your struggles, how you got to where you are, what brought you to the coaching piece that you're trying to get out there in the world. So, gentlemen, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Dude,
thank you so much, Greg.
Thank you. It is an honor to be on this podcast. We did have a great combo before, so we're stoked.
Yeah, we did. So, Eli, let's start with you. Let's talk about the battle, the journey you've gone through, and then we'll come to Kyle. We can just do this organically, but I want to just hear it's a shot of inspiration. I find people are inspired by overcoming the struggle. So let's hear about your path and struggle that you came to where you are now in your coaching career.
Absolutely. Yeah, aside from carrying Kyle on my back, that's what I've been using a lot. That's my biggest struggle, to be honest.
He thinks he's a comedian. He really does. He thinks he's a comedian, but I don't find it funny.
Really? Yeah, a little quick bicker sesh. No, just break the ice a little bit. Thank you again for having us here.
No.
Big struggles and how we are where we are today, kind of the pinnacle of where things started. Kyle and I met about 10 years ago now. We met at a dinner party, instantly hit it off. Instantly was a really cool connection, something more unique than I felt with it really anybody else. And there was this kind of burning desire to create something together, some type of business. We were involved in a startup called Soul ID, and it was built around a social network for action and adventure sports. We ran marketing and we ran content together. And it was just this really cool fusion that we had, and we wanted to take it further. We both split ways. He went down more of a content creation, photography, studio path, and I took down an e-commerce route. I built an outdoor adventure brand in the e-commerce world. And then we had sat together and over a beer one day, and there was no real opportunity or no real business out there for blending content and e-commerce together to create a product photography and video production company. So we set out and we built that, and that company is around today. It's called Results Imagery. But through that, Kyle and I learned a ton about each other. We learned a lot about respect. We went through all these deep kind of boot camp co-founding camps together, and that was really cool. That allowed us to develop that self-awareness muscle that we use every day, and that we preach in our program, and then we help men build that muscle up. And through that, we learn more about ourselves. We learned about our stressors, our triggers, how Kyle reacts, how he works better. What can I do to help position things that he can get things done more efficiently? Anyways, I'm building up to this story, by the way, but through this, I learned a lot about myself as well, which I hold a lot of accountability from people. And I know that as a leader and executive, that could be a weak point in mine, is that I care too much about people. And I know that they all ride on my ability to make quality decisions. A couple of years back, in the span of a 2-week period, and I'm not kidding, it was like we talked about in the pre-show, when momentum happens, it can either be a very positive momentum or a very bad momentum. And I went through this really bad momentum section of life where in the span of 2 weeks, I went through a divorce, found out that my ex-wife was seeing somebody else and was having a whole nother relationship on the side. And that ended up being the best thing that has ever happened to me in my life, hands down. So through a divorce, my uncle, who was this kind of guiding North Star in my life, he passed. And then our business, Results Imagery, was on the brink of failure in the 11th hour. And all of it started to just happen at one time. And I was just like, what is happening? Why is this happening to me? And I learned a lot about myself. And when I, talk about inspiration and how people can pull little nuggets out of my story, which I hope to inspire people from, is I had two options. It was a binary decision. It was either your life is over, you can take the left path and just dwell on it all day, or you can take the right path and build it and package it up and realize that is just a scar, a battle scar that you have moving forward. And it just crafted a ton of resilience for me. Yeah. And I knew that after that point, there was nothing really that was going to keep me down, hold me back, to be able to get through those three things all in that small period of time. And then you layer in that, I'm not going to call it a weakness, but that accountability factor, that all those people that we had to lay off, literally around a round table saying, okay, guys, you're done. That really hurt me to my heart. Maybe more than the divorce.
Yeah.
That I had to let all those people down so quickly. And I just learned, we learned a ton.
Well,
and
look, can I ask you something, Eli? I work with people about cleaning up things around their past, their divorce.
Yep.
Especially that's what I'm working on right now with divorced people having to deal with their ex. It wasn't like that at the beginning, though. He said that it's now the best thing, but at that time, I'm sure it was just crushing for you. And in that moment, I think what I typically find is people think it's never going to get better. It's never going to get better. And what was that point when, I guess, you hit your lowest? What was the click that actually said, wait, it might be getting better now?
100%. Couple parts of that is, one, I think deep down, I believe that everybody should go through a divorce and or a very bad breakup, a long-term breakup, so that you know exactly your crosshairs, what you're looking for in the next relationship. You will always have another relationship. It's going to happen. Don't know when it's going to happen, but it will happen. So now the positive, the glass half full, is now you have that checklist of items. So I was looking at that, okay, I know exactly what I do and I don't want. And I'm gonna find that. And when it comes, I know that I can pursue and move quickly because I've gone through that and I've matured a ton in the last 5 years. The other part about it too is, I think a lot of people have these red flags deep down. And I'll be the first one to say I had red flags going into this relationship. And I was like, oh man, blinders on. People are telling me, tap me on the shoulder. And you never listen to them. And then when it's done and it's over, you see all of the red flags and you're like, thank God I am out of that. And thank God that somebody else is taking that burden. And there's a country song by this guy named Riley Green. It says, buy him a beer. Essentially, it's the same story that I had, but if he sees the guy in the bar, he's going to buy him a beer. And the first instinct from any man going through this is anger and wanting to go after this individual. And it was very quickly, it was that glass half full moment that I had, that this is actually a really good thing to happen. It just needed to happen. And this is the best way to have it happen. So if I saw that person in the bar, I would buy them a beer and thank them. That was my aha moment, is when I started to realize that forgiveness is actually a huge part of divorce. And if you can actually, I was given this advice, and I guarantee you give this advice, but if you can forgive that person, you can just cut that part of your life, that chapter's closed, and you can move on.
Yeah. There's completion. There's completion and forgiveness.
Yep. Completion, forgiveness. It's over. That chapter is shut. Let's move on.
I learned in mine was the moment I gave up all of my ego, trying to hold on to something that didn't work, all of those different things. Also, not letting that go with you, because I let it go with me for 100%. Years and until I learned it. But you had to do the work. And I love that you and Kyle have done the work. So Kyle, I'm going to jump over to you real quick because I want to go back and forth with this a little, Eli. So,
Love it.
Kyle, were you and Eli had a business going while this was going on?
Yeah. Yeah. We had
So
results imagery going. Yeah.
let's talk about your experience while this was going on. What struggles were you going through? Because I find
Yeah.
typically when we're with someone in business, marriage, whatever, you're going through struggles too. And all of that either brings you closer or separates you. So let's hear a little about yours, and then let's get back up to where we were, and we'll put it all in together.
Yeah. Yeah. My story or what? The support towards Eli.
Yeah,
Okay.
your little story, and then how, and then
Yeah.
all of that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So back in 2018, I lived in a small little town called Paradise, California, right outside of Chico, California, North State. And November 8th, the fire started. And that fire was called the Camp Fire, which was internationally used, number one catastrophic event in the world that year. So that fire ripped through the city of Paradise, burnt my house down, burnt my town down, and burnt my parents' house down. And at the time, me and my wife had one kid. I had a small business, the photography business that Eli had mentioned. Main Street, total Main Street, USA, little studio. And yeah, so November 8th, I woke up, seemed like a normal day. And all of a sudden, my wife texts me. She's, "Hey, did you hear about this fire?" I'm like, it's just another fire. It's Northern California. Like when you live in a fire state, it's just whatever. You have your guard on, but you're just like, whatever. And then they're like, oh, it's starting to happen. It's getting closer. It's getting closer. And then you start getting voluntary evacuations and you start getting mandatory. Once it goes from voluntary to mandatory and you have 58,000 people leaving a town on a ridge that's only 4 lanes, that gets pretty scary. There was no exit routes. So my wife is already in town, Chico. It's like a commuter city of Paradise is a commuter city to Chico. And I had to go pick my child up at daycare. All while my parents are like being stubborn. And I'm like, Mom, Dad, you need to go. Like this town's burning. Like the fire and smoke is like starting to fill. There's spot fires near our house. And I had to get my kid, which was towards the fire, up against traffic. But that means I'd have to turn around and get back into the traffic to evacuate. So I went and grabbed my kid, my dog, and all I did at home was fill up a small piece of luggage of some items that we needed because I figured, it'll be a 2 to 3 day evacuation. We'll get back home. Texting my parents, calling them saying, you need to leave now. Like you got to get out. And of course we grabbed my child and I hit traffic and I sit there for 4 or 5 hours, walls of flames, just every side of the road. And finally, we got out with God's grace and some faith and prayer driving down that highway. But that was obviously life changing. And the fact that the trauma doesn't necessarily come from the home burning down or losing everything, it's the experience afterwards, not knowing where to go, not knowing what to do. What do? You're homeless at that point, but there's also 50,000 plus other people homeless at that point, pouring into towns 300 miles outside of this area. So that was quite the struggle. But the day before the fire, me and my wife actually had a miscarriage. And we were never able to cope through that and mourn. For those of you out there that's gone through a miscarriage, it's like losing a child. I mean, it is, but like a living, like you've held that baby already, because you start planning, you're naming it, you're seeing your future. So we were never able to really move on from that. Yeah. So there's all this emotion, all these stuff going on. I'm the backbone of the family. Eli and I still have our business going on. I'm trying to support my parents and my wife and my child. And so there's different ways you can take it. You either can go back into your shell and your cave and just be scared, not know what to do, not move forward and make it worse. You can stay complacent and just ride it and just see what happens and live in that for the rest of your life, which a lot of people still are stuck years later. Or you can move forward and learn and self-reflect and find the small pieces of gratitude and thanks that you have. And that's what I decided to do. And I just worked really hard at building some goals for my family and saying, hey, you know what? Let's look at this as a positive in some way. This is a restart of our life. Unfortunately, it has happened this way, but we got to look at it somehow. And so going through all that, it obviously taught me resilience. But one thing that I think Eli could attest to with this is when I went through that in my life and Eli went through what he went through, we went to each other. Like the first people we went to was each other. Without Eli, I would have struggled so much more, and I would not have had more of a positive outlook on life because I had someone to talk to. I had an outlet. I had someone that was, pushing me forward and constantly cheering me on. And the same with Eli when he went through his divorce and the death. I was there every second. And a lot of that on both of our ends, there's a lot of sacrifice that you have to go through with your family and your friends and other stuff that you're working on to be there for that person. And so through those learning that, wow, like we can keep each other moving forward and support each other and know that we can be there for each other. That's coaching.
Yeah.
We coached each other just as friends and through love and compassion and wanting just to be there for each other. And reflecting on that now, it's just natural for us. And 8 months ago, 9 months ago, we came together and said, something's not right with each other's lives. What's next, dude? What do we want to do together? Because we knew there was something. And literally within the same sentence, we were like, we both want to become coaches for men because we just felt like it was the natural next thing for us to do. And we don't have a lot of we are certified life coaches, but we don't have a lot of other coursework we've done. We haven't done tons of stuff. We're just teaching things that worked for us. At the end of the day, like these are the tools, these are things that worked for us, and we know it can help for other men.
Yeah. And I love it because it's real life. It's the tragedies we run into and what we turn them into. Certification isn't going to prepare you for that.
Absolutely.
Only life is. I think that's the key, is how do you take those things that are dealt to you and turn them into your crown jewels. I truly believe that my most difficult moments in life have been my biggest career movement, my purpose. I don't see where I would be without those tough things. As human beings, we try to avoid the pain, but you avoid the lesson. Most people don't want conflict, but if you don't have conflict, you don't have a breakthrough. You've got to break through something. What are some of the breakthroughs you had because of your relationship with Kyle? And Kyle, I'm going to ask you the same thing. What are some of the breakthroughs you had because of this? You were talking about how it really helped you, but let's talk about some of the breakthroughs, the insights that you had, not just around coaching, but just life. Eli, go ahead.
Yeah, just to kick things off, in terms of breakthroughs that Kyle and I had as co-founders, but also best friends, I think it's always having that soundboard. Are you doing this right? Am I thinking about this right? If you were in my shoes, how would you go about that? So I think one of the biggest things is just having a very trustworthy soundboard, somebody that will shoot you straight and they won't give you the BS or the fluffy answer. Even in times of deep pain, when you're going through something, I don't want the fluffy answer. But that came from Kyle and I doing the work prior to all this stuff happening. And we had a tool bag. So we knew how each other reacted. So he knew how to approach me and give me the hard advice that I needed in that time. But again, it came back to us getting, like you just said, I think what you said was perfect. And I love the term you said, but getting uncomfortable to change and going through pain to grow. We did that. We did that prior. And that's where it wasn't therapy, but I know what therapy is really good at is it's good at working from the past and what happened in the past, reflecting on that and building a tool bag to move forward in case you ever encounter that again. And a lot of the stuff that Kyle and I went through, like Kyle mentioned, is stuff that we talk about in our program. And my story, I really, when Kyle said, when we finished each other's sentences, it came to, we both want to package up this experience and influence and create a legacy for other men. And we've niched down into entrepreneurs because that's our background. That's who can relate to us in our age group. And the experiences that we had are probably very similar to a lot of people that are, whether it's not, the fire or losing somebody in that time, they still can pull little nuggets out of our program.
Absolutely.
And we preach, we eat our own dog food, I think is where I'm going with that. And those are some of the big takeaways that we've both experienced over the last 10 years.
Yeah. I love it because it's vulnerable. And I've seen a lot of people go into coaching because they want to be the expert on it.
Exactly.
I don't think you're the expert until
Flex
you've
ego.
been through it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it is a sounding board, like you said. I truly believe people will find their own answers if they have that sounding board, but they have to hear themselves many times.
Yeah.
They have to answer the hard questions that come at them. People ask me all the time, oh, what advice would you give me? I don't want to give you any advice. I want to ask you questions.
That's awesome.
Let's find out your genius. Some people say, well, you need to do this, you need to do this. I try to give people a menu of things so they can understand the many choices they have, and they might even order off the menu. But if I say, oh, you need to do this, I'm coming from my life experience, and my life experience will never be a match for what you have, what your experience. And I think it's important that we pull those things out. I love that you're focusing on men. I went to a women's leadership program a couple of weeks ago. Okay. And it was interesting because I'm sitting right at the front. I'm loving what they're saying. It's a panel of women. And all of a sudden they start bashing old white men. I'm sitting at the front. I'm like, okay.
Like
what would it be like if I were to bash women on something? It wouldn't be accepted.
Totally.
And I get forgiveness for it. I just laugh because I was like, you're actually harming the group you really want to reach. And I know I have a little more compassion, so I could hear and understand that. But I thought it was interesting to actually run into that. We got to be a sounding board. Kyle, what was your view, your breakthrough, your connection as you were going through this time, like we just asked Eli?
Yeah, luckily I had a few minutes to think about my answers. You got to have your team. You got to have your tribe. You got to have your people. And I think that's with every facet of life. Relationships. For example, I've got my other dad friends out there that had a few kids that I can talk to and go to and talk about being a father. I've got my business partner, my best friend to talk about. We actually talk about probably every facet of life, me and him. But I've got my people I talk to about my physical health, and I need help with this new workout plan, which typically is Eli. But there's other people too I talk to. Mental health. My spirituality, I have people that I talk to about having fun in life, all those different things. You got to have your team. And each one of those team players, you got to slate them for specific parts of your life to go to. So whether they're mentors in your life for those areas or people that have gone through it or going through it, whatever it is, I have found that is probably one of the biggest breakthroughs in my life is you got to have your tribe. And for men, that's difficult. It's not talked about a lot. Mental health, as we all know, for men is very hush hush. You got to be tough. You got to be masculine. You got to be quiet about it. And you just got to keep moving on because that's what we do as men. When in reality, we struggle very much with mental health. And the more you keep it quiet and silent, the worse it gets. And so having that community of men around you, supporting you, being their number one cheerleader, and just having a voice for feedback or just validation, which is even more important than anything, just feeling validated with your feelings is huge.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's sad that men are stigmatized that way because as they hold on to it, there couldn't be anything worse for your mental health.
Absolutely.
We have to connect.
So true.
We have to connect. And one of the things I also found, a friend of mine, Matt Jones, he put a group together. He calls it Thursday Night Council. And we all get together and kind of, it started to spread out. And it started with just a couple of guys. And now it's up to 15.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
We just get together and light a fire at someone's house and sit around and talk about not work, not anything else, just life and the kids and everything else. But people don't want to leave. They got to work the next day, but people are like, I don't want to leave. I want this because it's something I think most men are craving for.
Mm-hmm. And men aren't the first one to go out and look for it.
No, absolutely not.
That's not a thing that we do.
Yeah.
Eli and I are trying to present a platform for men to come to and feel comfortable and be okay to be vulnerable, which starts with us being vulnerable and letting it all out on the line.
Tell us more about the platform you're building. We'll start with you, Kyle. Tell us more about what you're trying to do, what you're trying to reach.
Yeah.
You mentioned a little of it here.
Yeah, no, we love this. We can talk about this all day long.
Good.
So essentially, we're helping millennial men entrepreneurs create a balanced lifestyle, which is 7 different pillars and facets of life that we've identified. and really understand what their limited beliefs are that's holding them back, and understanding those through teaching them self-awareness practices. And eventually our number one goal is to show them they have an unlimited amount of potential in life. But it really starts with creating a balanced lifestyle and feeling that you're giving each part of that life the attention that it needs. Because if you have one of those tanks empty, it really drains you in the other. So finding balance throughout life is really important. So we're out here. It's a group coaching program. We do weekly calls, Q&As. We have an online course. We do live events in person, all that fun stuff. And just looking for men just like us, looking to improve themselves and really focus on every part of life that they can.
Kyle, let me ask you, because I hear many times when people talk about balanced lifestyle, most entrepreneurs say it's not balanced. There's just no way you can balance it. So what do you say to people about it's really not a balance because certain things are priority now, then it'll change, then it'll change. What kind of insight or questions would you ask someone like that?
Great question. I'd ask them to open up their calendar and see what they're prioritizing. One of the number one things that we teach is time blocking. You only can prioritize things if you're actually putting them down on paper and on calendar and looking at your whole week. A lot of people, when they think of putting things on the calendar and scheduling and prioritizing and becoming stronger at the things that you do, they're only thinking work. Oh, I need to schedule this for it. But really, that should only be one of 7 parts of your life. But as entrepreneurs, we prioritize our work and our business so much where it's very unhealthy. And that's why we have all this stress and chaos going on, because we're giving it too much. That's what we say is, dude, let's open up your calendar and you tell me that you're not prioritizing these different things, because I can guarantee you it's going to be 90% work stuff and maybe 10% of the family and other things like that.
And they won't come to the end of their life going, I wish I would have worked more.
Yeah. You hear it time and time again.
Oh, absolutely. Eli, share a little about what you love about doing what you're doing now, because I could tell Kyle was talking about the 7 pillars and things. Give us your perspective on coaching and getting into helping people, like you said, look at the priorities of their lives. What does that give you?
Massive fulfillment. The reason that we started this, and a part of the reason why it's called peak fulfillment, is because Kyle and I are chasing our fulfillment, and this fills our entire bucket up. Every time that we get to interact with one person or a group of men and have them see that aha moment, typically it's something deeply rooted in their past, some type of pattern that's formed that they then now have a fear, and that's holding them back. We open them up and we start really diving in, and we can again get that aha moment. It is such a cool feeling. We had just a really cool, it was actually an off air after a podcast with a host a couple weeks back, and it was just this incredible aha moment we were able to give him. He's not really in our demo for the most part. He's a little bit older than us, and that's when we first started this, again, full vulnerability here, that imposter syndrome about, man, can we really coach somebody that and give them that aha moment when they're 15, 20 years ahead of us in experience? And we completely proved that wrong or proved ourselves right in the last couple of weeks of talking to this guy. And those moments to me are why we do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that feeling. I've always loved helping. I'm a pleaser. I'm a giver. I've always felt that kind of drum beating inside me.
One of the reasons I think that's there, because it was for me when I did all the work, I had those aha moments, and it's being able to give that back. I think it's like nitrous oxide on a car. When I give it to someone else, it means so much more, because I know the struggle I went through to have that aha moment. But when I give it out, there's something beautiful about it, because it perpetuates and gives on beyond.
I love how you put that. It totally is.
Yeah.
Keep giving.
Yeah. And what I love about it is when you see other people do that again. So the people you touch, and then they do it again and they do it again. It's also like, wow, that's a manifestation of something. I had to do the work first, though.
Yes, exactly.
And that's one of the things I find. If you got imposter syndrome, I think, have you considered the work you've done? Not comparison. Comparing yourself, I can't remember who said it. Comparison, when you compare yourself, that's the end of joy. There's no joy once you compare yourself. But have you done the work? And if you've done the work, you've got something to share. It might not seem like much to you because you've gotten that thing already.
Yeah.
But when you see that aha moment on someone, it's like, oh, it reminds you of what you had at that moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My
Couldn't agree more.
imposter syndrome goes away pretty quick when I started learning stuff from my 4 and 8-year-old. They tell me the wildest stories from school, and I'm like, wow, all right. I learn something new every day.
Yeah.
It just shows age doesn't matter.
That's it.
Yep.
It doesn't. It really doesn't matter because I've seen very foolish old people. I've
Yeah,
seen
no kidding.
very wise young people. But
Yep.
it's an issue of wisdom, not knowledge. That's there.
Exactly.
There's a real distinction there, I think, and wisdom comes with experience. There's just no getting around it. And like you said, you guys both have a deep experience of overcoming the obstacles in your life, and you're completely set for doing what you do. I completely see that. I know that. I've been coaching long enough to be able to spot it. Everyone, if you get a chance, I'd love for you to reach out to these guys real quick. I know we're going to have it on the links, but give everyone audio where to go to find you guys.
Absolutely. There's one place you can find us, and that's peakfulfillmentcoaching.com. So if you're a guy out there that's a millennial, you're an entrepreneur, and you think you need a little balance or you think you don't need balance, you still probably need to talk to us because you're probably losing a little bit of self-awareness there. So head over there or head to LinkedIn, look up Kyle Nelson, Eli Libby, give us a follow or a connection, and we can chat with you there.
And folks, I hope you've enjoyed this. And guys, I really want to say, let's circle back at least next year,
Absolutely.
if not
Let's do it.
sooner. But I'd like to hear more about how things have progressed as you've gone, what's
Yeah.
built up. So let's just put a placeholder here because I want to stay in touch with you guys and make sure I promote what you're doing out there in the world. I really enjoy engaging with you, and everyone out there, thanks for listening to another Shot of Inspiration. If you'll click a like down there or subscribe, really appreciate it. I wish you the best. Greg Stevens, your host for Shot of Inspiration. I'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of A Shot of Inspiration. If you like this or any of our other episodes, make sure you rate it and share it with a friend. This is Greg Stevens, and we look forward to being with you next time. Until then, be bold, be courageous, and respectfully speak your truth.